Welcome back, students. In this video, I am going to talk about coordination in humans. The coordination in human beings is usually brought by both the nervous system as well as the endocrine system. But in the current video, I am going to talk about the central nervous system or the nervous system in human beings. So the nervous system in association with muscular tissues and endocrine system, it will perform certain activities or it will control the entire organism. So before going into details, let us have a look at the constituents or components of this nervous system. So usually the human nervous system is divided into two parts, that is the central nervous system, we also call it as CNS, and the peripheral nervous system. We usually write it as the PNS. So the central nervous system is the actual one which controls or which is the decision maker, whereas the peripheral nervous system is the executioner which executes the decisions. So this is the one which executes the decisions. Okay, whereas this central nervous system is the decision maker. So this central nervous system, it contains brain and spinal cord. So these two are the important organs of human nervous system or the central nervous system. Whereas the peripheral nervous system consists of somatic nervous system and autonomous or autonomic nervous system. So somatic means which is under our control. It means which is under our control. We tell them to do the actions, it will do the action. Like it means which are involuntary inaction. Like if we ask our leg to move, it will move. That is called somatic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system is involuntary in action. So without your knowledge, the action will be performed. Like blinking of your eyes. So this happens without your knowledge. So or the movement of food in your digestive system, this also happens without your knowledge. Okay, so these actions are involuntary, it means which are not under our control. So that is called autonomic nervous system. And this autonomic nervous system is again divided into two types, sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic system, which controls the flight or fight hormone, that is the adrenaline. It means in complex situations, so whether you face the situation or you draw from the situation, that is being decided by this sympathetic nervous system and the hormone flight hormone. Whereas the parasympathetic nervous system, it is controlling the relaxation and digestion part. Okay. So with this little introduction, let us talk about these human nervous system in more detail. So as we all know, all living organisms are made up of cells, and similarly this nervous system is made up of cells, and those cells are called as neurons. So before discussing the details of the nervous system in more brief or in more contextual part, so let us talk about these neurons. So why we are talking about neurons here? Because they are the structural and functional units of the nervous system. So these neurons are the structural and functional unit of nervous system. So this microscopic structure is composed of three parts. One is the cell body. So this blue colored one, this is the cell body. And the finger-like projections. So you can see this finger-like projections here around the cell body. So these finger-like projections are called as dendrites. And the long tail-like structure. So this long tail-like structure, this is called as axon. So these are the three major parts of the neuron. So let us discuss about each and every part in more detail. So if we talk about the cell body contains the nucleus and all other cell organelles, and it has some granular bodies, and these granular bodies are called as micelle granules. Whereas the dendrites, so these are the finger-like projections. So if you see the cell body, it is made in this way. So this tail-like structure is the axon. This is the cell body, and you can see some branched structures. So these branched structures are nothing but these are the dendrites. So you can draw the diagram simply in this way also. So these branch-like structures, what we call them? We call them as the dendrites. So this central one, this is the cell body. So what does they do? They collect the information from the cell body. Okay. They collect the information from other neurons and they will transfer it to the cell body. Okay. Now let us talk about that long tail-like structure that projecting out from the cell body is called as axon. So this long tail-like structure, this is called as the axon. So if you see this, it is branched at the distal end. Here it is branched. So this region is called as axon terminal. And each branch has a knob bulb-like structure. Each branch terminates with a bulb-like structure. It is called as synaptic knob, and which possess synaptic vessels called neurotransmitters. So here, if it want to deliver the information, so through this synaptic knob, so it may get connected to the another neuron. Simply I am writing N, or it may get connected to the muscle. So if it is connecting to the muscle, it will release the chemical molecules. Those chemical molecules are called as neurotransmitters. If it is connected with the next neuron, it will transfer the same chemical or it will transfer the electrical impulses when it is getting connected with the another neuron. So it transmits nerve impulse from cell body to synapse. So this synaptic nerve region is called as synapse when it is connected with the neuron, and when it is connected with the muscles it is called as neuromuscular junction. So if you see this axon, so usually it is in bluish color, purple color. Okay. So it is the you can see some yellow colored cells over this. So these yellow colored cells are nothing but these are the squam cells. And these squam cells they form the myelin sheath. Okay. So based on the presence or absence of myelin sheath, these cells are again divided into two types. So that we will discuss in the coming slide. So as of now, you can see between these two squam cells, there is some space. So this space is called as nodes of Ranier. The space between the two squam cells is called as nodes of Ranier. So based on the presence of myelin sheath, neurons are classified into two types. Okay. So the one which is having the envelope forming by the squam cells, this is called myelin sheath, and enclosed by squam cells but do not form myelin sheath. In both the cases, squam cells are present, but myelin sheath may present or may not present. Okay. And the gap between the myelin sheath is called nodes of Ranier. The transmission of nerve impulses is slow in case of non-myelinated neurons, whereas in case of myelinated neurons, it is very fast. And usually myelinated neurons are present in the brain and spinal cord. It means the cerebral and spinal nerves. Whereas the non-myelinated neurons are in the present in the peripheral nervous system. It means, to make it very simple, the central nervous system consists of myelinated neurons, whereas the peripheral nervous system consists of the non-myelinated neurons. The transfer of nerve impulses is fast. Here in this case, it is very slow. So now let us talk about the reflex action. So before talking about this reflex action, so how it is decided as a reflex action? Suppose a child is there, he don't know there is a hot object and there is a very small child. Okay, so what happened on the day one? He goes and touches this hot milk cup, and immediately he removes his hand from there. So it takes for him some time to analyze the information. Okay, but suppose it may take around 5 seconds or 10 seconds. But what happens here? And the very next day, when the child touches the cup, he will remove the hand within a fraction of 1 second or less than a second. How? Here, the child brain has learnt that this is the hot object, it shouldn't be touched. And the information, to process the information, it took 5 to 6 seconds on the day one. But on the very next day, it doesn't take any time for the processing information. It already knows the solution. So whenever it touches the hot object, it should remove the hand immediately, or else it will burn his hand. So in this case, in the second case, it will take very, very less time, because the action has been already stored in his brain. So what happens in this case? The spinal cord will come into picture. So when the actions which you are stored in brain, so these actions will be remain in their brain permanently, most of the actions. So when they remain in their brain permanently, simply next time when they want to perform the same action, then the spinal cord will come into picture. Spinal cord will perform the action. Okay, there is no need of processing in the second time. So directly for the stimulus, the spinal cord will show the reaction, and it will tell the brain, oh, this happened again, have done this work. Okay, hope you understood my point of view. So in the first time, when you encounter a new action, suppose for the first time, when you encounter a very new action, then what happens? The information has to be processed. Information has to be processed. Like, information has to be processed. So for processing the information, it will take some time. But for the second time, processing is not required, right? So the time, so like the time for the reaction will be reduced. So that is what I want to say here. So when the information has to be processed, here the brain will come into picture. So in the second time, when there is no need of processing, directly the action will be executed. In this case, spinal cord will do the action, and it will tell the brain that this has happened repeated again and have done the work. So this is called reflex actions. Now let us try to understand in the textual terms. So the process of responding to a stimulus without conscious effort or without involving the central nervous system, it means it involves the spinal cord. So with okay, is called reflex action. The process of responding to a stimulus without conscious effort. Okay, so it means there is no information processing here. Without processing the information, the reaction will be shown. That is called reflex action. Suppose when a bright light falls on your eye. Okay, so when a bright light falls on your eyes, so immediately your sensory neurons present in the eyes, they will send the information to the brain. Okay, so here this has been learned over times. So whenever there is like bright light falls on your eyes, immediately you will stop closing your eyes. What happened here? Here the information is sent to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord will send back the information to your eye muscles uh, to close the eyes. So that is what happens. Suppose if there is a glass over here, so you want to drink the water. So your eyes will look at the glass, and this will send the information to the brain. So brain will tell like our spinal cord, this will decide and tells your hand muscles to catch the glass, to lift it up and drink the water. So this is how the things will happen. Okay, so I have to have discussed two examples here. One is the example of bright light, and another one is the holding a glass with the hand. Okay, so in both the cases, what is happening? So there is a stimulus. So the stimulus will activate some receptor. So this is called as sensory receptor. So sensory receptors contain sensory neurons. So this will pass the information to the sensory neuron, and from there the information will be passed to the brain or spinal cord. Okay, so this is brain, and here you can include a spinal cord. So once the information is processed, it will send the information to motor neuron. So motor neuron will perform its action, then the response will be shown. Okay, so this is the path of the reflex action, and this path followed by the reflex action is called reflex arc. The path followed by the reflex action is called reflex arc. So what is happening in response to a stimulus? So this sensory neurons will carry information to the spinal cord or brain. Okay, so whenever there is a stimulus, I'm writing STI. So these sense organs will detect the stimulus, and with the help of the sensory neurons, they will send the information to the brain or spinal cord. So this is called as afferent pathway, and this sensory neurons also called as afferent neurons. Okay, so once the information is processed, conveyed to the brain or spinal cord, then they will send the information to the motor neurons, and this will send information to the muscles or the organs or parts of the body. So this then the action will be performed. So this is known as efferent pathway. Okay, and these neurons or motor neurons are also called as efferent neurons. So hope you understood the same thing what we discussed in the previous slide. The same thing, half of the path is called afferent pathway and half of the pathway is called efferent pathway. Okay, so the stimulus to the brain, the journey of stimulus to the brain, that is called afferent pathway. From the brain to the effector organ, that is called as efferent pathway. So now let us see the difference between sensory neurons and motor neurons. So they transmit information from sense organs to the central nervous system. So this will transfer information from central nervous system to the, mostly you can call right as muscles or parts of the body. So these are called afferent neurons. These are called efferent neurons. Based on the pathway, name of the pathway, they have given these secondary names. So I'm ending up this video over here. So you can make a note of these questions. Try to answer these questions on your own by referring your textbooks. Thank you for watching the video. In the next video, I will be talking in more detail about brain, its parts, and which part will control which action. So all such aspects we will discuss in more detail.